Obviously I'm not Matt. Like Todd said, I'm just a deacon here, the least of them in my opinion. But it's good, and I look out here and I see all you guys, my family, and it's fun to be up here, and it's fun to share what God has been teaching me with people that, I can say that I look into these eyes out here, and I love each and every one of you. You're important to me, and you've been a big part of my life, and so I do. I love you guys. Love you very much. Thank you. So, and that's the topic, really, and it's funny because I have these feelings for you guys that I'm experiencing right now, and this is the topic that God had me share. What is love? And it's not. Obviously it's well past Valentine's, and it's not really that kind of love that he's been asking me to share with you guys, but more of just, how we love him, and Deuteronomy is, I think the Old Testament is full of God's love and how we love him. So what does it mean to love? How do we know that we love something or someone? Right? We spend time with them. We do things for them. Being married, I can say that I've learned a different kind of love for my wife, for my kids, in that I will do things that don't make sense if I'm just thinking of myself. My kids, they might tell you that they know that I love them because I spend time with them, because I'll play their Pokemon game with them or do whatever. And it hasn't been as much lately because I'm in school, but, I do enjoy coloring a little picture. Sometimes unicorns is what they pick for me. So, I don't know, I'm feeling very manly. So, in light of that, how do we know that we love God? So, loving God, this is a topic that's covered in libraries worth of books and articles and research papers, theologies. There's probably a infinite amount of sermons that are about it. And the truth is that there are so many ways that we can love God. And if I were to go around and ask each one of you to give me some ideas of what it is to love God, I would probably get different answers from all of you, and they'd probably all be right. But the question is there a place where the totality of what it is to love God is captured in one place? And I believe it's Deuteronomy. So Deuteronomy is the fifth book of the Pentateuch, the 5 first books of the Bible, the original Torah, in the way that Jews think about it. And in this book, Moses, who has led the Israelites out of Egypt, led them into the desert, and watched over them for a long time, is finally asked to lead them to the very gates, if you will, of the Promised Land, the Valley of Moab somewhere, near a place called Mount Pisgah. Not like ours, but like the real one in Israel. And his life is about to come to an end. And so he is giving them, he's about to turn the reins over to Joshua. And he is giving them final instructions that God has given him, reminding them of where they've been, who they are, who God is, God's design for them, and what it means to live in community with a holy God. And among these speeches that he gives in the book of Deuteronomy is the 10 Commandments, which are wonderful. That's one of the first things I memorized, I remember as a kid. And right after that, he gives the passage that we're going to look at today, which is probably the most wonderful commandment of all, because it really tells us what we need to know to love God. So, Deuteronomy 6, 4-5. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. So why is it that God, through Moses, is giving the people these instructions? What I read in Moses' speech is something like almost a desperation for them to really get what he's telling them, what God is trying to tell them. And to really get that, the first 3 verses are important. And just like so many things happened last minute this morning, I made my slides last minute, so not all of them are on there. So verses 1 through 3 say this: "These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. Hear, Israel, and be careful to obey, that it may go well with you, and you may increase greatly in a land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you." And in some ways, the Israelites did in fact understand. They did get what Moses was telling them, because these verses became one of 3 parts to what's known as the Shema, which is a Jewish prayer that they practice. Practicing Jews will say twice daily, sometimes more. And it's also contained in this, which is called a mezuzah. You've probably seen it if you've been to a Jewish family's house. It'll be on the right side on the doorpost going into the house. So what this is, it contains 3 scriptures, among which is what we just read. And they do this because of the verses that follow, where Moses commands them to repeat it to themselves, to think about it daily, to teach it to their families, their children, to put on their doorposts, which they've done here, and to think about it, to mainly just to have it on their minds. So while Christians don't have mezuzahs at their house, the importance of thinking about, in particular this command, can't be missed. So this commandment contains 2 very important understandings for us to take hold of. First, it tells us who God is. And second, it tells us that we owe God our love because of who he is. And by love, what's meant is reverence and obedience and faithfulness, something that it's fair for him to ask. So as far as the commandment, who exactly does it say that God is? Verse 4 can be generally rendered in a bunch of different ways, but there are 2 which theologians think are the best way to translate. The first one is that the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And this indicates that God is unique and exclusively the God of Israel. And God takes time to remind us who he is many times throughout Scripture. And I picked out this one in particular because I love the way Isaiah writes things. It says in chapter 45, "For this is what the Lord says, he who created the heavens, he is God. He who fashioned and made the earth, he founded it. He did not create it to be empty, but formed it to be inhabited. He says, I am the Lord, and there is no other." Another way verse 4 can be rendered is, "The Lord our God is one Lord." And this rendering declares the unity and the completeness, the wholeness of God. And this is not meant in any way to change our understanding of the Trinity, but rather that all the parts of God, everything about God, is unified as God. In understanding the Trinity, we say that the Father, Jesus, the Holy Spirit are unique individuals that do maybe some different things, but in essence and in purpose, their goal for us, they are all the same. They are God. And one scholar says the 3 individuals of the Trinity are not ambivalent. They have a single purpose and objective for us and for creation. So both ways of looking at that are accurate, and they're consistent with our faith, and they help us understand the completeness of who God is. He is indeed a unity, but he's also the only God. A being who is truly beyond us, separate from his creation, completely himself and his own. And here he's saying that he is the only God of Israel, and of course now us. He's our only God. We belong to him. And recognizing who God is of course not insignificant. Knowing the unknowable power of God and that we are his creation and his beloved children is meant to drive us to our knees in worship. Meant to drive us to prayer, to read his Bible, to know more about him. And because of that, it becomes much easier to acknowledge who he is and that he is better in every way. Isaiah 55, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Romans 8:28, "For we know that those who love God," and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. In Proverbs 3, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." With this in mind, with this understanding of who God is, what he means to us, we go to the next part of the commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And in light of our understanding of who God is and our submission to him, this verse has particular significance. Our recognition of him leads to the appropriate demand that we obey him. And without going into seminary language, what we need to know here is that obedience to God is how we show him love. And these are just simply some ways that are listed to do that. The heart, the soul, and strength have significance to Jewish readers of the Old Testament. But for our purposes, God is showing us that we need to love him, to be obedient to him with the words in our heads, our feelings, and our actions and the words that come out of our mouths. Because it's hard to say that we love God if we're stealing from the store. It's hard to say that we love God if we're thinking nasty thoughts about our noisy neighbor. It's hard to say we love God if we aren't praying or are in his word. And I'll be honest, that's something I've been guilty of. And I say it's hard, but what I really mean is that if you're not showing obedience to God, or trying to the best you can, you might not be his follower in the first place. And, that's not to say that we don't fail. Of course we fail. I'm admitting to you that sometimes it's hard for me to be consistent with my Bible reading and with my prayer time. The thing is that we still try. The expectation for believers is that we're going to screw up. We're going to sin. I don't know who said this. It might have been a camp pastor a long time ago when I was a kid. But this image is stuck in my head of that we are going to continue to fall on our faces. The point is that we want to fall on our faces in the direction of God. So at least the tops of our heads are moving in God's direction. And then we just get ourselves up, repent, dust ourselves off, and continue forward because we're going to fall again. Unfortunately, that's how it is for us. In Matthew 22, again, I meant to have this on a slide, and I apologize. Matthew 22, verses 35 to 40, Jesus is teaching in Jerusalem and being tested by the religious leaders. And he addresses the Shema with one person. He says, one of the religious leaders, an expert in the law, tested him with this question, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." So Jesus calls this the greatest commandment. The law, the foundation for living in community with a holy God, relies on obedient love, which comes from our understanding of who God is. Hopefully this begins to make sense to you. If we know God and who He is, we will want to obey Him. The rules that follow after almost don't matter. He could command us to eat squirrel for the rest of our lives. And we would trust Him because we know who He is and we love Him. We'd trust that squirrel is the best thing for us to eat, which thankfully is not the case. I've been watching that show Alone, where they do eat squirrels. It was on my brain. I'm sorry. I had to. So added to this greatest commandment, though, is the second command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus adds this because it fits the understanding of God, who He is, and why He is worthy of our obedience. Because if we're going to obey Him, if He cares enough for us that He wants to live in community with us, our understanding has to be, well, He loves not just us, but other people as well. This part of the command actually comes from the end of Leviticus. Leviticus 19, which says, "Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." This love for our neighbors means a lot of things, but I believe that in this context, if we love God, we will obey Him and spread the good news of the gospel to other people, as He commands us to do in Matthew 28:19, the Great Commission. If we obey the greatest commandment, we will obey the Great Commission as well. So Moses commanded the Israelites to memorize this greatest commandment, to teach it to their families, to write it on their doorposts. Well, our eyes and our ears are the windows and doors to our minds and our hearts inside. And memorizing a passage like Deuteronomy 6:4-5 is something, and keeping it on our brains is something that will ensure that what comes in through the windows and doors of our minds is good and reminds us to love God and remember who He is. So a pastor friend of mine was kind of surprised that I was sharing this in only one sermon, because there's obviously a lot to unpack. I could probably do 2 sermons just off the top of my head on what it means to love God with your mind. But you know, to be honest, I mean, even as it is, I would recommend that as we go today, as we go throughout our week, that we think about this passage, that we think about what it is to love God and to love Him obediently because of who He is. So that's all I can say. I know I'm going to be thinking about it, and how I can show Him obedient love, and how I can show Him that love by telling my neighbors and people that I meet about the good news and the gospel. So let's pray.